What's up, guys? It has been with Ben's election predictions, and we're going to dive right in today with a matchup between Donald Trump and Joe Biden for the 2024 presidential election. And obviously, neither candidate has locked down their party's nomination 100% for Joe Biden as the, you know, incumbent president. I would say he's pretty much locked it down, but there's all this speculation that maybe he's too old to run, maybe Gavin Newsom might run instead. And he actually had his, first kind of, I would say, most prominent challenger in Dean Phillips, who is a sitting congressman, obviously as RFK Jr., has become an independent. And Donald Trump, while, he's not an incumbent, I call him a quasi incumbent, and he's definitely the front runner for the Republican nomination to be president. So I think this makes sense to, do the prediction for the matchup that the hypothetical matchup in 2024. And what's funny about predicting the 2024 election is we actually have a pretty good data point looking back at the 2020 election and the 2016 election. 2020 had the same candidates as in Donald Trump and Joe Biden. 2016 was a little bit different. However, I think it can be a good data point as well because it was a little lower turnout than 2020, which and it had a more prominent third party candidates, which I think will be fairly similar to 2024. And so, before we kind of dive right into the predictions, I just wanted to kind of give you guys a reminder of what these colors and numbers mean in terms of what I'm predicting here. So the colors in the dark blue are going to be your safe Democratic states. So, no matter what happens, some crazy scandals might happen, some, last minute October surprises. I don't think this is going to change necessarily the safe D or the safe R states. And this is on the presidential level. I mean, obviously, some of these states that are safe R or safe D, they have like Republican or Democratic senators or governors. But on the presidential level, we're kind of stuck into our partisan divides here. And as we kind of go down the color scale, you can see that states like Oregon, New Mexico, Virginia, New Jersey, New Hampshire, and Maine on the Democratic side. These are likely Democratic states, so states that I would expect any Democratic candidate and Joe Biden to win. But if things crazy happen, that there is the potential that Trump could win it. And same with the states like Montana, Iowa, Ohio, South Carolina, and Florida. So all right, let's dive right into these predictions. There, you obviously need 270 to win the presidency. And so by the end of this video, you will have my predictions for who I think will be our next president starting in 2025. All right, so first of all, kind of just I've already filled in the safe and likely states, so I just want to comment on a couple of things that might be changes from my former predictions. Florida, I actually do think Trump's going to win this state by more than 5 points. It's been trending for Republicans. If you look at the voter registration, you see that it changed a little bit after 2020, and it's just continued in that direction a lot. Ron DeSantis won this state by 20 points in 2022. I don't think Trump's going to win it by that margin because there's just going to be higher turnout, and I think Ron DeSantis is a probably better candidate in Florida than Trump will be on the presidential level. Let me think of any other notable states. I mean, I think Ohio and Iowa will be pretty static, similar to 2016 and 2020. If Youngkin was not the governor of Virginia, I do think Virginia would continue its trend blue. I do think Biden will probably win the state by 10 or 11 points. He won the state by 10 points in 2020, and so I expect it to be around 11 or 12 points. But having a Republican governor might kind of counteract some of those trends. I do think New Hampshire will be probably pretty similar to last time. I do think New Jersey could be a little bit closer. I think Biden won it by around, yeah, 16 points. So maybe it would be safer to put it in the safety column, but New Jersey is kind of funny sometimes, and I do think it might be a little closer in the like 10 to 12 point range here. Um, Colorado's a state that's been, Trump won it by, or no, Hillary Clinton won it by about 5 points in 2016, but it has just been trending so far to the left. Biden won it by 14 points in 2020, and so that's why I feel pretty confident calling it safe. New Mexico, I'm not ready to call it safe yet. It has a large Hispanic population, which has been pretty swingy. And I'll kind of talk about that further in the video and why, I think Trump will actually perform better with Hispanics, I think, in 2024, a trend that has continued from 2016 to 2020 to 2024. So let's kind of dive into these lean Democratic states, the states that I think Joe Biden will win by between 2 and 5 points. So I think the most obvious one right here, no surprise, is Minnesota. This is a state that, Trump has lost 2 times in a row. In 2016, it was fairly close. He only lost about 1.5 points, but in 2020, it wasn't that close at all. I do think, Trump will do a little bit better in the state. So, he lost it by about 7 points in 2020. I think overall this is going to be a lower turnout election. I mean, in 2020, we had massive voter turnout. I mean, voter turnout at levels that we've never seen before. And I think that this is actually going to help Donald Trump. I think there were a lot of people who were not huge Joe Biden fans, but they hated Trump so much that they turned out to vote for him. I think you're going to see a lot of even just like really progressive voters not turn out for Joe Biden because they just aren't happy that he hasn't been progressive enough on issues like Israel, Palestine, and other issues that are escaping my mind right now. And I think you're also going to see some lower propensity um, voters, like maybe more minority voters who, were really pushed. And there's this, insane turnout machine in 2020. I don't think that that's going to be as prominent in the 2024 cycle. And I also do think, Trump's message of the economy was doing better on my watch is going to resonate some with, some of the working class voters, with, working class Hispanic voters. And I think Trump is going to win a higher percentage of the black vote and the Hispanic vote in 2024. I also do think that's going to be offset by Trump losing more of the white college educated voters. And I do think that the white working class voters is going to be pretty static from 2020. Um, he did very well with those voters in 2016, and he lost a little bit of support in 2020. So maybe he'll come back to those 2016 levels. But I think overall his loss in the white college educated voters is I think he's going to slip there. After January 6th and some other things. Anyway, I was going on a long spiel. The next state that I think Minnesota is going to be around that 3 to 5 range. Michigan is one of those states that I think will be around that 3 range. So this is a state that uh, Trump won in 2016, lost in 2020 by more than the other Rust Belt states in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. So he lost the state by nearly 3 points. And I think there's some trends that are offsetting in Michigan. So I think the Republican Party in Michigan is kind of crumbling. The Democrats won a trifecta here in 2022, and the abortion issue, has been really galvanizing for Democratic voters in after the fall of Roe v. Wade. I also think Biden's support is going to soften a bit just with the economy overall there. So I think both these factors are going to kind of counterbalance, and you're going to see a pretty similar um, turnout here, or a pretty similar result here in 2020 in Michigan, even though voter turnout's going to be lower. All right, now let's move to the uh, lean Republican seat. So I want to first start out in the state of Texas. So there's always this narrative that okay, just in the next election, Texas is going to go blue. Texas is definitely trending to the left. I think the Senate race in 2024 will be pretty interesting. I think Ted Cruz is going to perform slightly worse than Trump will in 2024. I mean, Ted Cruz nearly lost the state in 2018. It was pretty close between 1 and 2 percentage points. You can see over time, in especially since Bush, who's from Texas, this state has been, slowly but surely trending to the left. Trump won the state by around, 10 points in, or 9 points in 2016, and then around 6 points in 2020. And, you know, I think Trump's going to win the state by around 4 to 5 points. So I don't think he's going to lose, he's going to lose votes in, Austin and Dallas for sure, just in the college educated suburbs. But I don't think he's going to lose Hispanics by, I think he's going to actually do better with Hispanics, but Hispanics are going to represent a larger portion of the population in 2024 in Texas. And I also think you've seen a lot of people moving out of California into Texas, and these are going to be more conservative people. It's a similar reason to why Florida, I think it's going to be pretty Republican in 2024. I actually think Florida's going to vote to the right of Texas. So there's a lot of just counterbalancing trends, and it's hard to sum up in one video. So I don't want to go off on too many tangents. Anyway, so these are all of the lean states that I have right now. So the remaining states, I think, will all be tilt states between 0 and 2 percentage points. And which just shows, all these states or all these elections are just on a total knife's edge. So let's start, with the tilt Republican states. So I don't think this will come as a surprise. So I do think North Carolina is going to remain in the tilt Republican column. This is a state that honestly has been a little bit swingy between elections. I think people thought Biden was going to win this state in 2020. That's what I actually had predicted. And I'll kind of go at the end of the video to what my predictions were on election night. I actually flipped Georgia and North Carolina. But, in 2022, this was a state that Ted Budd won on the Senate level. I don't think that the Democrats are going to be putting a lot of resources in North Carolina. While it's always a close state, I do think Donald Trump will pull the state out probably between 1 and 2 percentage points, similar to his result in 2020, as you can see here. I don't think a lot is going to change. I mean, I think you're just going to see a lot of the same trends evolved with lower voter turnout, which could actually help Trump some and offset some of the influx of college educated voters into the Charlotte and Raleigh region. Next up, and this is going to be a change from the 2020 results, so this might be kind of the most surprising example. I do think that Donald Trump is going to win Georgia in 2024. This is a state that Trump lost narrowly in 2020. He lost it by under 0.5%, and which is an automatic recount, and they did a recount. Joe Biden did win the state fair and square. And this is a state that has been trending left for a while. Trump won the state by 5 points in 2016. And what's so interesting about all these states that, Trump lost in 2020, it lost in 2020, he received more votes in 2020 than he did in 2016. However, I do think in a lower voter turnout environment, and I think a state, that's been under Republican leadership at the governor level, Kemp won the state by 7, 8 points in 2022. I Even though with the influx of college educated voters into Atlanta, I think at the end of the day, Georgia is a southern state, and I think that Trump will do better in some metro neighborhoods that have a high minority population as well, and I think Trump's going to do as well in the rurals as he did in 2016 and 2020. Next up on the tilt Republican states, I actually do think that Nevada is finally going to turn red in 2024. This is a state that Trump lost in 2016 by around 2 points, and that Trump it was about the identical vote count in 2020. I do think that the Republicans are going to invest a lot of energy in Nevada in 2024. You saw in 2022 that they elected a Republican governor, even though the Democratic incumbent won. I think that the type of people that live in Nevada, it's a state that has like a lower college educated uh population than some of its neighbors, in California and Arizona in the Phoenix area. And I think that Trump's message on the economy is really going to resonate here, because, I think you've seen in Las Vegas and other areas, they were doing better under Trump's presidency than they have been under Biden's presidency. And I think that that message alone is going, and with a lower turnout environment, is going to help Trump there in 2020 and have him narrowly take it. So I'm not going to fill in all the states right now just to leave some suspense. So I will kind of move on to a state that I think that Joe Biden will actually narrowly win in 2024, and that is the state of Pennsylvania. And so Pennsylvania is really an interesting. It was a very close state in 2020. This was obviously one state that flipped both ways. Uh, Pennsylvania has been pretty strong for Democrats in the 2020 and 2022 cycle. I think under the leadership of Josh Shapiro, and just how lopsided that race is, I find it hard that Trump's going to pick up the state like he did in 2016. And you see that Joe Biden won by a more convincing margin in 2020 than Trump did in 2016 here. And so I just think Pennsylvania is a historically Democratic state, and while I do think Trump's going to pick up some voters, he's also going to lose some voters to Biden here, and so I do expect Joe Biden to pick up Pennsylvania. All right, what y'all all been waiting for is the state of Wisconsin. I think this will be the tipping point state in 2024. This is a state that Trump narrowly won in 2016 by 0.7%, in a state that Joe Biden won by an even smaller margin in 0.6% in 2020. And we saw them reelect their Democratic governor and their Republican senator here in 2022. However, I do think that Joe Biden is going to narrowly win Wisconsin. I mean, I think the state's going to be one that's going to be within 0.5%. And it is just going to be on a knife's edge. I think the election is going to be decided in Wisconsin. I think the lower voter turnout I think is going to help Trump. I think in the Milwaukee area, voter turnout's going to be a little bit lower. But I think in those suburbs, the suburbs are going to swing even a little bit more to Biden after January 6th and his indictments. Um, but that's where I think see things standing right there. So you see that Joe Biden is at 269, Donald Trump's at 256. So we still haven't gotten to that magic number of 270. However, I do think that Biden is going to win in the state of Arizona. Arizona was also one of those states that I was really debating back and forth. But I think what we've seen is in the past, 6 to 8 years, the similar to like in Michigan, the Republican Party has been really incompetent. And this is a state that has been trending to the left, especially after John McCain ran in 2008, so similar to Texas, with Bush. And I think when you have Carrie Lake on the ballot running for governor, I think that's actually going to hurt Trump. Maybe similar to having Martha McSally on the ballot in 2020. And you can see this was on a knife's edge in 2020. But and while I think there are some trends that are in Trump's favor, I could actually see this state going for even maybe 1 to 2 to maybe even 3 percentage points for Biden. I think Arizona is a little bit different than Georgia, and there's a little bit more just individual state dynamics in play in Arizona, where the Republican Party is just kind of like totally out of whack. And so, not that it really matters. I do think that the two congressional seats are going to go to Joe Biden as well. Um, in Nebraska, it's the Omaha area. I've talked about. I think the suburbs, are going to even swing more towards Biden. And in Maine, I don't. It's not even worth kind of covering right now. So as you can see right now, Joe Biden is going. My prediction is that Joe Biden is going to win by a smaller margin than he did in 2020, which is just crazy because this would be the third election in a row that will be incredibly close. I expect, if Joe Biden wins, Trump to challenge it again like he has before. And the last thing that I just want to touch on is just, why I think my predictions are credible, even though, we're 1 year out from the election, is in 2020. On the eve of the election, I had one of the most accurate projections going in. I flipped North Carolina and Georgia, but those ended up canceling each other out. And so, yeah, so let me know in the comments whether you think my prediction is accurate. And please leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and send this to your friends as well. Thank y'all.